Hello and welcome to the Daily Scripture Podcast. My name is Jerome Lavelle, and I hope that you're having a marvelous day today. Today we will be looking at Matthew chapter 22, verses 1 through 14. Jesus again, in reply, spoke to the chief priests and the elders of the people in parables, saying, "The kingdom of heaven may be likened to a king who gave a wedding feast for his son. He dispatched his servants to summon the invited guests to the feast, but they refused to come. A second time he sent other servants, saying, 'Tell those invited, behold, I have prepared my banquet. My calves and fatted cattle are killed, and everything is ready. Come to the feast.' Some ignored the invitation and went away, one to his farm, another to his business. The rest laid hold of his servants, mistreated them, and killed them. The king was enraged and sent his troops, destroyed those murderers, and burned their city. Then the king said to his servants, 'The feast is ready, but those who were invited were not worthy to come. Go out, therefore, into the main roads, and invite to the feast whomever you find.' The servants went out into the streets and gathered all they found, bad and good alike, and the hall was filled with guests. But when the king came in to meet the guests, he saw a man there not dressed in a wedding garment. He said to him, 'My friend, how is it that you came in here without a wedding garment?' But he was reduced to silence. Then the king said to his attendants, 'Bind his hands and feet and cast him into the darkness outside, where there will be wailing and grinding of teeth. Many are invited, but few are chosen.'" Today, in the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 22, verses 1 through 14, we hear Jesus telling a parable about the wedding feast of a king's son. In this story, the invited guests, for whatever reason, do not come. It seems that some ignore the invitation. Some are busy at home or on their farms or other businesses. Some, we are told, gather up the king's servants, mistreat them, and kill them. To me, this seems like a pretty extreme response to an invitation to the wedding of the king's son. Of course, the king doesn't put up with this slight of the invitation and the crimes that are committed against his servants, and thus he murders those guests and he burns down their town. And because he has no one to attend the wedding, the king then orders his servants to fill the wedding hall with whomever they can find. The scripture tells us that they did indeed do this with those both good and those bad. However, when the king comes to address his guests, he sees some that were not prepared to be there. They did not have the proper clothing, so he throws them out. What a scene and what a series of events we have in this parable from Jesus. In reflecting on this parable, I think it's important to note who Jesus was speaking to. The scripture tells us Jesus spoke to the chief priests and the elders of the people in parables, saying thus. So what we have then is his audience were the people of the church, the Jewish priests and the Jewish elders. And from that foundation, one can see that perhaps in the parable, they represented the invited guests. In addition, we had God as the king in the parable, and then Jesus is either the king's son, who's being wed to his people, or Jesus is the servant that's sent to the invited guests and they torture and kill. Now, those outside of the invited guest, those would be the Gentiles, the non-Jews, those people of the world who then are subsequently invited into the banquet. As I think about today's scripture passage, this parable, my takeaway is that God invites all his people. Jesus died for all of God's people, but also that God is a just God. Remember, the king had no problem throwing guests out of the wedding feast. He wants us and He wants all of us. In today's Gospel by Matthew, Jesus ends with the words, "Many are invited, few are chosen." A reassuring and warm, but also brutally honest thing for me to think about today. Many are invited, few are chosen. Thank you for joining the Daily Scripture Podcast. My name is Jerome Lavelle, and remember, our word of the day is many are invited, few are chosen. Until next time, be well and be blessed.